everyone, and welcome to our session on data capture. So one of the reasons why we've set this up, we've got you know, some really great people here to talk to you guys today. I won't be doing much talking, hopefully, she says, but those of you who know me really well, even know me shortly, know that I find it hard not to speak. So one of the things that we're really trying to improve is the way in which we communicate with our volunteers, understanding who our volunteers are in green spaces, and also, you know, understanding what motivates them in order for us to, you know, give as much support to our volunteers and keep as many of them being able to come back and do the fantastic work that they do for green spaces. So so we've got a couple of, I say presentations, won't be presentations so much, but, you know, members of the team talking to you about roughly, you know, what we've been doing so far around volunteering. You'll get to meet Freddie and Helen, who are our newly in post volunteer development coordinators who are working with BOSSF. And from BOSSF, we've also got Emma and Denise here as well. And then we've also got Debbie, who is our comms and engagement and kind of community advocate working for FPA. So, Debbie, I'm going to go off screen. So, are you happy to screen share and start the conversation?
I shall give it a go. Notoriously, when I screen share, Teams throws me straight out. So, but I am going to try. I am going to try. I have got a backup plan. So Simon has also got the presentation, which makes it a bit easier for me because we're actually sitting in the same room. So I can go, hello, everybody. Right, let me try and share it. Okay, so when I go to, hopefully that's working. So, oh, brilliant. Okay, I always like to know that because I can't really see what's happening for everybody else, but luckily you can actually see that this presentation. It's just a few slides to take us through how we arrived at where we are in the FPA project in Birmingham. So we've been working with wider FPA teams and the National Trust, looking at both volunteering and general participation in parks. And obviously for the National Trust, volunteering is fundamental to their operational model. So everything, well, not everything, I shouldn't say that, a lot of what they do depends on a very formal method of volunteering that I think probably most people are aware of. We often forget the organisations that are actually run almost completely by volunteers. So we think of a volunteering model in a certain way, depending on our organisation. And working with the National Trust they wanted to encourage us to think of all of the different ways that people can participate and volunteer in green spaces. So some of the other groups also made comments. So we're not working on our own. We're working with 7 other authorities. And you can just see some of the main points that came out from 4 of the other authorities. And it was, you know, building new partnerships with the community and deliver a workforce transformation. That what they were actually saying was they needed to think about their staff and what their staff, how their staff think about volunteering to actually be able to work better with the community. Edinburgh said about exploring new governance models, including participatory budgeting and researching the common good with volunteers. So there's all sorts of different projects going on. Nottingham building social capital with a step change in stakeholder engagement, and developing community leaders and building capacity from Plymouth. That developing community leaders is an interesting one because a lot of the other authorities are, because of the National Trust model, considering volunteer or voluntary volunteer leaders. So obviously in friends groups, that very much happens already. But for the authority as a whole, that may not be something that we actually use as a model yet. So we're going to explore that. So two of the messages for today that came out from that original work that's ongoing actually with the other authorities and the National Trust was we needed to look beyond the usual suspects. We had to have people-powered parks. Those were the two of the expressions or two of the messages that came out. And in order to know what we have and what we managed to develop, data capture and looking at data, that's a word that turns most people cold, I think, when it comes to, you've got words like people power and then you've got a word like data that doesn't always thrill everybody. But I know for Denise, for instance, that she lives and breathes data, so very, very important. And she knows the power of it. Yeah. So those people power parks have to be powered by data. There's our little tongue twister for today. And this is some of the learning that the National Trust, well, it's just a few screenshots just to sort of, you know, make you aware of some of the things that they're thinking about. So they've been looking, as I say, in a very formal way, because their volunteering model runs the operating model really for the National Trust. Without volunteers, it just wouldn't happen. So they have to have a lot of data capture, they have to have a lot of training, they have a lot of feedback. But even though they've been operating like that for years, they've realised there's a lot of opportunities that they miss. You know, one of the things that they've got that they look at is young people and family volunteering, and for them that's a really great focus. And for everyday participation, they have these simple steps that they're doing, telling stories, which we've been looking at in Naturally Birmingham through Earth Stories and other conversations, and getting and Green Champions, getting people to talk to each other and understand why they volunteer or why they don't volunteer, what they enjoy about it, what they'd like more. Then we've got the bit that we're looking at today, or focusing on today, which is gathering data. That gathering data then should feed into being able to share connections both between volunteers and volunteer organisations. A platform to contribute ideas right across those volunteers. How they give time, so how we advertise volunteering, are there incentives for giving time around that part of it, learning new skills or learning the skills that as an organisation you feel volunteers should have, must have, and crowdfund innovation, which we're also experimenting within Birmingham. We've had the Dorbury Fields Reptile Project, and we want to look at wildflowers next across the city, working with an organisation called Patchwork Meadow, who, this is not a new thing, it does happen in the city, but can we do it in a more structured way? Could we have an action group where volunteers from across the city on a certain period of time, couple of weeks or something like that, could they all turn their attention to wildflower sowing or seed gathering, whatever's appropriate? So those are the different areas that we've been looking at with the National Trust. Why do we need to capture volunteering data? I'm sure most of you really know this, but what was interesting to me is when I started to research this document came up, which very much followed everything that the National Trust was saying to us, and it was written in 2008. So key aims for both government and voluntary and community sector are to ensure that volunteering is accessible to everyone and to increase the diversity of volunteer involvement. So that has been in the National Trust, in the National Trust, in the National Health Service, and some of the biggest volunteering organisations, at least since 2008, but actually for many years, that trying to increase the diversity, not only of the volunteers, but increase the understanding of what the diversity of volunteering opportunities and what we actually mean by volunteering in the broadest sense of the word. So it's true that organisational learning can't take place without having in place some kind of monitoring of volunteers. So if we want to move from here to there, what have we got now? What are we doing in the middle, and what have we achieved? So that's the basic of that. So just jump into that. there's a bit at the bottom that says they are anxious too about what forms and methods of asking for information are most successful in eliciting accurate and useful responses. And there's a clear gap in information standards in relation to monitoring volunteers. And as I say, this was a research project done in 2008, but I'd have to say that from across that wider FPA, that statement still rings true. So having a method where people, organisations that either manage volunteers or manage green spaces or are involved in green spaces or the wider green agenda don't necessarily know who's doing what when, and there's no or very little coordination. Sometimes we do all come together, and there's been fantastic examples of that, but day to day that isn't normally what happens. I would like to put forward to you. So why should we collect data on volunteers? What types of data to collect and when? How data should be collected and stored? How to use monitoring data as an organisational tool. So again, there you've it says monitoring in this case simply refers to collecting information or data about and from volunteers, such as demographic information, time spent volunteering, particular support needs and suggestions for improvement. I would say that that's the bit that is least done. So we have a lot of information about time spent on volunteering. That happens to me all the time, Helen, normally. We do know, and it's really useful to have that time spent on volunteering, what people are doing. But when it comes to demographic information, so who are our volunteers and what do they think about volunteering, that's the information that's often not captured. And it says there at the bottom, monitoring is about more than just being law abiding. It gives you the opportunity to explore who your people are, what their backgrounds are. You may uncover existing talent or find new skills through identifying groups of people previously underrepresented in your organisation. I have actually seen through this process, we have already done, but it was at the start of lockdown, a citywide volunteer survey, which was just went out on social media, as I said. Unfortunately, it came during lockdown. But also social media comments and volunteering reports from other places that often say nobody is looking to see what we could do. So that we're being presented with an opportunity, but nobody's asking us what our skills are and how we could do other things or use those skills to one of the things that came out of Ward End Park was around the management plan, and the group of lady volunteers there, they said, yes, they do the gardening, but they're really interested in how a park works and the management of it and looking at management planning. So that's something that we will be doing going forward. But if that conversation hadn't happened, then they may have just carried on gardening, which is fantastic, has all of those benefits, but doesn't tap in to either their aspiration or their talent. Okay, so how to develop information storage systems. As I said, I'm not going to read all of these words because there's a lot of words and it's about data, but the one important one for me here on this list, they're all important, but where we are today is discuss, debate and decide how the organisations will use volunteer data and what type of data it will collect. This dialogue should take place at all levels of the organisation and include governing bodies, staff and volunteers. So that's where we are at the moment, and this isn't just one organisation. So the project, the FPA project, is already has multiple partners, and you can see those across the bottom. So Birmingham City Council, BOSS Wildlife Trust, Active Wellbeing Society, Landscape Practice Group, National Trust Heritage Fund, Children's Trust, lots of other people we've built partnerships with through this process. So this is the beginning, and this is us looking at something that Birmingham Open Spaces Forum already does a lot and feeds into parks, and that's why they have been looking at testing a technical digital form of gathering that information, where individual volunteers can send in their own information, and there's all sorts of possibilities around this that I'll let them talk about. So at that point, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions before Boss tell us all about what they've been doing. I can't see anything. Oh, this is a point.
Debbie,
so, yes.
Can I just quickly come in? I am collating volunteer figures, have done for 5 years on the neighbourhood. So I'm collating off quite a few of the bodies, and it's mainly volunteer hours, days, and then we put a value on it.
Fantastic.
But
yes.
It's done very basically as they feed the information to me and I put it in a spreadsheet.
Which, to be honest, Helen, this is kind of what we're going to end up with. In a way, it's what we end up with anyway, no matter how we collect the data. We end up with that, you know, spreadsheet of information. And of course, after you've collected the data, as you're saying, Helen, you pass it on, you use it.
It goes as a corporate KPI for the neighbourhood directorate. Okay. So I collect it just for the neighbourhood directorate, and it goes back to Rob James on a quarterly basis and then an annual total.
And that's actually a really important point, because within the project, we are actually, you know, looking at, you can see there at the bottom, BMHT and Witton Lodge is also part of the project, because we're looking at housing resident volunteering as well, and how we can capture community gardening and all of those aspects of it. So hopefully, Helen, this work will help feed that into yes. your...
I can share that with you at a later date, Debbie.
That's fantastic, because hopefully we're going to progress through this, and this is only the first bit of it.
Jules has got his hand up as well.
Jules.
Hi there. Hi, Deborah.
Hello.
I've actually got 2 related questions. It's a bit of a cheat. The first is whether you've talked to BVSC, because I believe they have a sort of volunteer sort of clearinghouse, and I guess they already collect data, and obviously they've been doing that for years. So the reason for that question is partly whether this conversation's about sort of establishing best practice and consistency across different organisations, or are you talking about some sort of combined system for all the partners in the FPA project? And in that context, my second question is whether anybody's talked to the 2022 games team, because obviously they're going to be recruiting and managing you know, a small army of volunteers, and it would be a great shame if you know, those links to communities in a whole range of contexts, because there's a big health and well-being sort of legacy issue for the games if all those contacts were lost.
Very good questions, and I don't know if Hamira wants to say something else around it, but I'll just answer quickly, briefly. Yes, we spoke to both of them, and it's actually where we started. So Commonwealth Games wasn't going fast enough, so they're still working on what they were doing, and I think BVSC as well, they're developing. At the moment they've got a notice board where they advertise volunteering opportunities, and that leads, the other bit that you've all been involved in or been invited to be involved in is the development of a green platform where the other part of these processes, so the conversation, the opportunities and all of that will end up, and that I'm guessing that will all come back together. So this is looking at a specific app today, but really I try not to say the wrong thing. It doesn't matter what method we use for capture in the end, as long as what comes back is usable by everybody working together to get the most benefit out of it. So this is just one example of the type of digital app that you can use to capture this. If we could get one app and one place where all this connected together in the end, that would be absolutely fantastic. And it is in our head, it is an ambition. But in the term of the project, you know, people, obviously organisations have to work at their own speed. So we needed to go ahead and look at the opportunities that are out there at the moment anyway, and see what we could do. So as long as actually the data, it really doesn't matter how you capture it, as long as when it comes in, there aren't all sorts of different fields or things missing and you can't put it together in the end. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a geek, so I work for years in information standards and data standards, so I absolutely get that. Yeah.
I have both sides to my personality. I I worked around the computer data capture for parks for many years, but I do fully understand that the bit that often complicates the system is the people. So if I was in charge and I could just tell everybody what to do, I'd say one system, everybody, make our lives easier. But people, that isn't how people work. What's important is that we recognise the need to capture it and we work together to use it, and that will include the Commonwealth Games and hopefully all of the voluntary organisations. We actually spoke to museums as well. So in the beginning, you know, we have talked widely across organisations in Birmingham and the wider authorities as well. So it's all in our head, but this is how we're going to progress through it at the moment. So hopefully when it comes together at the end, it'll all fit together and work. Jules, sorry. I hope that's how it does end up. So that is our want.
Just to add to what Debbie said, Jules, your points are really valid, and absolutely we've had the conversations, and I think we just now need to do something. We need to be the ones that are, and there's no reason why other people can't join this approach as well. Sometimes it's just people are waiting for someone else to do something. So if we can go to the Commonwealth Games with this offer and saying, look, we found something and we want to test it, we want to see if it works, and hopefully it will. Obviously that's what the BOSIF team will talk to everybody here about now. Otherwise, I think we're in danger of never doing anything, because Birmingham is so big as well. It's such a huge geographical footprint, not just of population, but of organisations and so forth. It's currently this is within our gift, I would say, with the FPA mandate. So that's kind of where we're focusing. So I think there's no more questions. And Emma's put in the chat, I completely agree with. We need to make sure that Commonwealth Games don't lose the enthusiasm of their volunteers to kind of, once they're over, to keep that up if they want to. I did wonder, Emma and Denise, before we actually start, it'd be really nice for the team to actually meet everybody here, to meet Freddie and Helen Harvey. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, because Helen and Freddie have got a really big role to play over the next few months around helping our volunteering model develop. That's fine, Councillor Clark. Thank you for joining us for the short time that you've been able to come. So Helen H, would you mind just coming onto camera and just introducing yourself?
Should I stop?
Introduce myself when you get to my slide.
Oh, sorry. I thought, okay, that's fine. I thought the introductions had been missed out. Okay, no worries. Okay.
You want me to go through my slide?
Yeah, if it's up now, that would be great, Helen. Thank you.
Okay. So I was appointed in February as volunteering development coordinator with BOSF, working on the FPA project, and so I'll give you a perspective from on the ground, if you like, which is where I'm trying to be, regardless of lockdowns, and thank goodness it's easing. So my background is that I come from 15 years in HR, working for an engineering company, so very much in the corporate world. I moved away from that in 2013 and started working in third sector with people from disadvantaged backgrounds, trying to help people from all sorts of problems get back into work. At the same time, I started working, volunteering in conservation, and quickly found that my day job clients benefited hugely from volunteering experiences outdoors and in green spaces. And quite quickly, I started to bring my clients to these calmer and healing environments for their mentoring and job coaching sessions whenever I could. So it made me realise very quickly that what a difference parks and green spaces can have to people from a great variety of backgrounds and situations and very difficult issues. So I've been appointed to focus on Dawberry Fields, which is Kings Heath, Branwood End, so B14 area of the city. It's about 20 acres, I think I've got that right, and it boasts a range of habitats. So it's a sort of a snaky rectangle, get my maths right, and it boasts hedgerows, brook, meadow, uncut area. It's got a wild area with a hidden pond. And to cope for families, it's also got a modern play area, a skateboard bowl, excellent access paths all the way around, walking and jogging and cycling. It seems to cater, to be available to cater for all types of people from all backgrounds, but I would ask, does it? And how do I know whether it does or not? So as a volunteering development coordinator, I've been tasked with the need to address how to get the park used more by its community, how to make it more loved and nurtured and maintained in a sustainable way by the community. It's all very well people coming in and doing events, but when those people go away, does the park stand empty and nobody's benefiting from it because we haven't encouraged and nurtured the community to make the most of it? So in Dawberry Fields, there's plenty of people in the park, but there's not many interacting with the park. And that's what I'm seeing. There's no friends group, there's no volunteering regularly happening. And yet, when you start to talk to people, when you just dig underneath a little bit, you're finding that there are people waiting to do these things and they need some kind of facilitation, I think, to help them to get started. What I need to find out is why certain members of the community might feel they aren't welcome, why they feel there might be some kind of barrier for them joining in and volunteering, and try and address what issues I find. There is a reasonable amount of diversity in the area, and of course once you go a couple of miles out there's a huge amount of diversity, but I'm not seeing that. And even now, people that I'm talking to, I'm finding are certainly coming from a particular demographic. So for me, I guess what I'm trying to share with you is how collecting data is going to help me on the ground. If we can collect information on who's using the parks now and what they're doing or what they want to be doing, then we can address what works and what doesn't work to try and get people outside using their green space. And we can have a better understanding of the gaps, the people that aren't engaging. So parks and green spaces are, as we've seen in the news and all the stuff that's in our third sector inboxes at the moment, are going to be very important to the city in the future because we're looking at this plan, aren't we? So if we're going to make that work, then we've got to meet everybody's needs and expectations of green spaces. So people that feel they aren't catered for and that they haven't been considered are never going to engage. So by collecting more detailed data on the volunteering that is happening, by groups and individuals and the odds and sods, you know, where people just do a little bit here and there, will help us to address the problems that we've got in not engaging everybody and quickly find out what people are interested in doing. So if we can encourage those to come forward and track their volunteering data, we'll have more accurate data on age, ethnicity, activities, and we can look more closely and address those who are, as I've put it, conspicuous in their absence. So, and that's what I'm trying to focus on at the moment. It's a very slowly, but once you gain people's trust and you listen to them, it's amazing what you find out. But these conversations need to somehow make it to data so that we can then analyse the issues and move forward. So my email and my mobile are there. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about what I've said and about any ideas anybody has to help me. So thank you.
Thanks, Helen. That was great. Thank you. I guess we can do Freddie later if bosses want to continue on with their presentation.
I think it would be good, as Freddie's here, if he wants to just give us a quick. I mean, Helen, you've done a wonderful job in describing the overall, but Freddie, I don't know if you just want to just quickly tell us the difference about Ward End Park. That would be interesting.
I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you.
All right. Yes, so my name is Freddie Tema, and I'm the Volunteer Development Coordinator for Ward End Park. And this role is mainly to do or focus on employment and skills that the volunteers can acquire while utilizing the facility. My background is in agricultural education, in forestry, in amenity horticulture. I've got a BA in management and leadership and an MSc in project management. And I happen to have been associated with an award a couple of years ago, which saw me with a trip to New York to go and share best parks management practice with the New York City Urban Park Rangers. And I have an interest in parks because I've worked with people while I looked after 2 parks in inner Birmingham City. Now, our focus being on capturing data of volunteers and also the works of the volunteer coordinator. It requires, in my view, a lot of commitment to ensuring that there is a connection between our works and the people that come to use the parks. And looking forward, I think that there should be very deliberate plans on our part as Future Parks Accelerator workers to motivate people to come into the parks and have a way of not them only coming to the park to use it once, but to engage them in activities that are going to make them remain coming to volunteer in the parks. And an instrument of capturing information is going to help in many ways beyond our local level at Ward End Park, but also it's going to feed into the entire program of the Future Parks Accelerator and also the wider community for those that may want to use information. I just have a feeling that the area where the park is located is made up of people from different cultures. And I've been walking around since I started in February, and I've tended to sense differences in the way the people respond to my presence there. And it is with those observations that I've made that I think when the time comes that we are actively collecting data, because at the moment what I've been doing is just on an informal basis, and usually it took the form of me being on the ground. I've realized that there are members of that community that are very suspicious. I don't know for what good reason, but you get there, they seem to think, and I think it should be connected to COVID, because maybe they thought whoever was there was checking out who they were. Maybe they were smoking this or all sorts of suspicions, and maybe they were in a group, and maybe you wanted to charge them. You were posing to be a warden because they didn't know me. Warden, volunteer development coordinator, maybe you were a police officer and things of that nature. So the only observation that I think I should make known is that the volunteers are bringing their energies, their times, committing it to the park. And so the way this new data capture method is implemented, I think we also have to explain it very well so that the volunteers themselves know the importance of having such a tool for collecting information. Otherwise, whereas we may want to use it for the reasons that we best know and understand, some of the volunteers may not understand it, and it may possibly, I'm not saying it will, it may fence them off the boundaries of the park. And I thought from the onset I should make my observation known. It may appear as if maybe I'm trying to be critical of it, which I think is also a good idea, but it's just a caution from the behaviors that I've been observing as I've been interacting with the people. Warden Park, I'm told from history, has been associated with unemployment and providing opportunities for people to come and gain skills. So we've got the Dolphin Center, for example, which is already doing a fantastic job. And we've got a very old, in existence, Friends group, which has worked for a long time, which now is getting a bit slow, maybe only because most of the members are getting a bit tired in terms of age. But it has done a lot of works in the past. We've got support of the ward councillor. He's a regular user himself. So we are thinking that he is a big asset to the park and to the volunteering development coordination itself. And we are going to find ways of maximizing utility in terms of gaining benefits from them. On the whole, Warden Park participants, the people are already volunteering, most of them, but we need to capture more and form teams that we know are working with us. And that, I think, is one reason where I see this tool of capturing data is going to help us a great deal, because it will help us to coordinate the activities which are already taking place and those that might come in the future, to help us coordinate them so that we know when is this particular activity done, by who is the key contact. And in case we want to make changes or make improvements or additions, it'll be easier than the way it is now, where people go to use the park and there is no one who is coordinating all the activities. So from that perspective, I find that my role in Warden Park is one that I think I'm going to enjoy, though only for a short time as it appears. But after the project has ended, I hope what would have started from these additions that are going to be brought about by the data capture is going to be something sustainable into the future of not only Warden Park, but the other parks where the pilot projects of Dorbury, Fields Neighborhood Park and Warden Park are appointed to do.
That's absolutely, that is fantastic. And Freddie, that point that you made about people needing to understand what the data capture is about, that's exactly it. Because so, you know, Simon and I had we've been talking about this on and off, and he said, you know, it is the point at which data capture fails is when the individual doesn't engage with it. So it's a really, really valid point, and which is the bit I said, you know, you can be as geeky as you want, but if you don't get the people on board, it's not going to work. So thank you, Freddie. That was absolutely brilliant. Thanks for that.
Just to echo from me as well, Freddie and Helen, your passion for people is it's unmeasurable almost, given that we're talking about data, and it's wonderful to see how you're thinking about connecting real people to data, and that's what everybody here on this call needs to hear about the challenges of that, but also the benefits of that. So I think you've given us a really good flavour for that. Debbie, should we pass over to Emma and Denise, who are going to actually, for the pièce de résistance, is to take you. I've really bigged it up now, Emma, sorry. The Forward Track It app, just to show you folks how simple it actually is for volunteers to use, and do what it says on the tin, track their data. So I'll pass over to Emma and Denise, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm going to give you a bit of background. So as Humera says, it's about how did we get to here. I just looked. We did our first presentation for BOSF in 2015. It was called Data is a Pain in the Bum, which was our first presentation at an event about getting volunteers on board with understanding why collecting data is so valuable to them as individuals and groups, but also to the wider picture of investment in parks and open spaces. We've gone through a variety of iterations since 2015 of ways of collecting volunteer data. We started off with pens and paper, which tended to get a bit soggy when it was damp out, keeping lists of people who came, and as we've come back to now, the point of that was to identify who is volunteering, or more importantly, who isn't volunteering, as a way of us looking at adapting the services to meet the needs of people who currently aren't volunteering. There was a lot of resistance to that, partly as a result of it being pen and paper. Each time somebody came, you had to ask them again the demographic information, which meant you kept shoving it in their face every time you asked them to participate. And we saw quite a sharp drop off in the numbers of organisations and volunteers engaging in that process. You've got too many people going, why do you want to know that? I'm not going to tell you that. So we stripped back what we collected to just numbers of hours and activities done, at which point we saw an increase in the numbers of organisations collecting the data, and more importantly, as Debbie says, submitting it, because collecting it's one thing, submitting it is the next thing, and analysing it is the third thing. Fourth thing is, what do you do with the analysis? We then, because we're working with the Active Parks programme, managed to go a bit digital. And we had swipe cards and all sorts of clever technology. That was a triumph in terms of collecting data, but an absolute failure in terms of what anybody did with the data and whether we ever saw it again, whether we could use it. So we've settled into, until this recent iteration, collecting large amounts of data on how much volunteering is being done, but what it didn't do is tell us who was doing it. Denise has got all the details, and I'll bring Denise in the kind of question and answer phase. But we were able to identify how much data is done how much volunteering is done in a year, and put a financial equivalent against it, which we know is a huge underestimate. That came in at about 650,000 in the pre-COVID world. So that's, that was really useful information to collect, but it had this huge gap of, we still don't know who's volunteering, or more to the point, not volunteering. So with the arrival of FPA and their interest in data and volunteering and who is and who isn't, one of our colleagues, Matt, who can be here today, he's on leave, we asked him to do some research into data capture apps for volunteering. There's quite a few of them out there. He did an analysis in terms of simplicity of use versus cost. And we came up with the Track It Forward app, which I've put in the chat, but I know it's disappeared up the top a bit. So click on that link and you can find out more about it. So we are about a month, 2 months into getting out to a pilot number of sites. We've got 5 or 6 sites, and also a kind of selection of individuals who are just curious about it. Denise will be able to answer some more questions about how many people are actually using it. I have it on my phone. It says hours. I'm going to put in an hour. It's the date there. The activity is a meeting. And the site is, well, I'm going to put it to Cottridge Park because I'm here as a Cottridge Park volunteer. Submit. And that's done. That's it. That's all you have to do. And I can look back on their hours submitted, success. And I can look back on there and see what other volunteering I've done. We are definitely in a phase at the moment of testing and trialing it. It has the advantage that when you register, we collect the demographic data then. So you only do it once, so you only get annoyed with us once, and you have the option to tick prefer not to say. But we continue to collect that demographic data without shoving it in your face every time and making you annoyed. So it's a bit stealth. And if people realise that we were collecting this data about them all the time, they may be less happy. But hey, they're on Facebook. They're happy for Facebook to collect it. We should take that advantage where we can. So where we're at, we did an analysis of what was out there. We thought this was the best one to use for our pilot. We're going to pilot it for about 6 months, try it on several sites. And as it goes and as we tweak it, we will offer it out to more sites, more organisations to test it. It has the advantage of collecting information from those volunteers who are not attached to a group or maybe semi-attached to a group. So, for example, in Cottridge, we've got a whole team of litter pickers. I have no idea when they're doing their bit, how much they're doing, what they're doing. So it's useful for that, and I'm trying to encourage them. We also collect information beyond the kind of on the ground thing, and this is one of the things we need to explain to people. That volunteering is just not the time you spend digging in the park. It's the meetings you attend, the funding bids you fill in, the minutes you write, the time you spend on social media. So bringing in those members, for example, of your trustee board who, attend meetings, write policies, that is still relevant. And we want to encourage those sorts of people who are harder to track what they're doing, what they're contributing, to use the app, as that's an easier way for them to do it. It's still a bit complicated for where we're doing organised groups. So you've got one person submitting information for maybe 10 volunteers. And there'll be some double counting when we get some of those individual volunteers using the app and somebody still doing a head count. But that's inevitable during the kind of pilot and teething bits. Yes, volunteers can go on and get a log of how much time they've done, which they can then use and extract out. They can get their own information from it. I'll shut up now. Denise, are there any sort of the technical questions you can contribute answers to, or shall I just tell you what? Let's ask questions first, and then Denise, if there's anything particular you want to add in. Do you know how many people have signed up so far?
Well, I've got the report, and there's only probably about 15 people that are sort of regularly putting things in. As for people that have signed up and haven't put anything in, I'm not sure exactly, but I think everybody who has signed up has done some volunteering. So it's quite small numbers at the moment. Yeah. But I've had another group interested today who wants to sort of take a part in the pilot, which I'll talk to you about separately later. Yeah.
I mean, it coincides with the time when there's not much outdoor volunteering going on. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to do that balance of getting people back out there and not scaring them off with stuff that's new. So we're still using the old-fashioned versions, but I think it's something that will grow. Mm-hmm. I've got Simon with a question.
Yeah, hello everybody. So I'm gonna start with my Birmingham Tree People hat on, I think, because this is where I was thinking about this. What functionality do you currently have available for your trial? The reason why I ask this is because we've currently got about, and Steve could probably correct me, we've got certainly a dozen or more volunteers who are going out doing highway street tree survey work across the city, and actually having the GPS function will allow us to know, yeah, actually you are on site, or you were on site at that time. Mm-hmm. Volunteers could be working anywhere in the city, like I say. It would be quite useful for us to just try and start to gather that data about what time they're putting in. It gives us some indication of how long it takes them to do the survey work, and it can inform our project work going forward. And then thinking about a bit of a selfish thing, obviously as a trustee, thinking about how we insure people also allows us to see whether somebody was actually volunteering if they had an accident, and then try to make a claim. I know it's a bit selfish thing, but there are all those other back office functions as well that I think we could use. And I know I'd certainly be very keen on looking at the trial on this, and it was something we were talking about anyway. So
there's
25 players going on. 25 out there in the field as we speak.
So 25 out there in the field now.
So the way we've set it up is site-based. because obviously it's related to parks and open spaces, but it's a free entry block. So I don't know if we can do GPS. We'd need to find out about it, but you can certainly put a postcode in.
Yeah. So I think that answers the question, then, Emma, because the GPS comes in at a paid subscription.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, we have a paid prescription. We have a paid subscription, but it may not be the top level one. But we would need to check. We didn't think about GPS, wasn't an issue for us, but we could look at whether we can add that in as a function.
And just to also say, Simon, so we're really interested in different models of using this, you know, this tool. So BOSIF have bitten the bullet, and you know, FPA are supporting the payment of the subscription at the moment. Going forward, there's conversation about a foundation. So you know, we would put in some funding to support this kind of data capture across the whole of green spaces. So I would really suggest, you know, whether, Simon, if you chat with BOSIF, Emma or Denise about whether if Birmingham Tree People wanted to, it is BTP, not Trees for Life, isn't it, Simon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, just getting
it wouldn't really matter, because you know, I mean, either way round, you know, there's data that can be captured from some of the existing Trees for Life activities, you know, where they have members of the public come along and volunteer as part of that tree planting. Even if it's just for a one-off thing, you know, you can do your head count and register that.
There's nothing to stop Birmingham Tree People joining the trial at this point. We can do it on a kind of postcode basis while we work out how the GPS bit works.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, I have looked into it, because on the top level funding, you can have one accountable organisation and then set up a number of smaller organisations, each which see their own data, but you're able then to track back the bigger picture as well. So
and if, Emma, that requires a bit more top up in terms of funding, then you know, we can sort that out in from FPA. I wouldn't want that to be a barrier to anyone.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier in terms of the functionality for other organisations who want to, in a sense, if we have one for Birmingham, that those individual organisations want access to their own information. So yeah, that would make sense if we move that to the next stage. That makes it much easier.
So Paul from Whitton Lodge had to go, but maybe we could do some follow-ups with some people in terms of whether. So we'll just before we kind of close the meeting, is there anybody else from hearing this instantly thinks, oh, we'd really like to trial this out with our volunteers? Oh, I can see Helen's got her hand up.
Hamira, I've got a list of the people who currently supply to me. So Birmingham and Trees for Life, Simon, Denise at BOSFA. So I can let you know the people I collect off that help with green spaces. I do have some wider, like waste and housing, but I'm sure they'd probably all be interested in this pilot.
Great. Well, you know, I don't want to promise the world, because it's BOSIF who are leading this for us, but you know, there is funding to support it. So, and we're, you know, the more people who try it. Oh, Paul says yes, they'd be interested, which is great. Okay.
Can I just share the screen a minute, and I can show you the information that we give to volunteers. There we go. Can you see my screen?
No.
Have I broken it? There you go. Can you see that?
Yep, got that one there.
It's coming up. Yeah.
So the key bit we did was added a QR code to it. So basically, you go onto a website, log, and then after that, you can do it on your phone. So having that there, so that's the information we give out to volunteers.
So can I just ask, Emma? So if we have got somebody, thanks Jules so much for coming, and yeah, we'll be sending out information after this so people can kind of share it, and thanks to Emma from Wildlife Trust. To say you're not a member, so I'm also a Friends of Park chair for my sins. No, I love it really, and we've got a regular litter picker around our lake in Swanshurst Park. He doesn't want to be part of a group, which is fine. If I was to nab him, and I've started talking to him now, he used to be quite scared of me, like kind of like running after him with my litter picker and my high vis jacket. But I think we're friends now. So If I was to say to him, oh, do you know what, he must do at least an hour a day, Emma, if not more.
Yeah.
But no one's collecting that at the moment, as far as I can tell. So if I was to say to him, here's a QR code, I'll show you how to, would he be able to access that app then?
Yeah, absolutely. So that little graphic that we've got, it's gone out through BOSF mailing lists. That's available. And I know Swansea's Park wanted to be part of the trial. I think, have we had the meeting with them yet, Denise?
No.
No, it didn't. We haven't heard back from them yet, have we?
Yeah, so I'm with my Friends of Park chair hat on. I'm going to try and get that sorted. So because I'm really keen that we try and use it as well. So,
but in the meantime, I can send that graphic out to anybody who wants to use it, and you just give it to anybody you want, and we can, help people set up with that.
So, are there any more questions, folks, from anybody? Oh, Helen, you still got your hand up. Is that from...
It might be nice if there is other bodies to do, like Bosphora have done a practical session. It might be nice, once people have got a little bit more to grips with it, to do a practical session, say with Birmingham Tree people, Birmingham Trees for Life, because otherwise you're all going to go through the same learning curves.
Yeah. Helen, we run when people sign up, so for the pilot organisations, and that's for the Pilot Friends group, but we can do it for the pilot organisations. We will do a specific meeting with them while they log on, get set up, get everything sorted. So we would do that as a kind of online one-to-one session with them.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, we know enough about humans and technology that if we sit there with you while you do it, it'll happen. And if we leave you to it, you'll never get around to it. I'm guilty of that.
And Emma and Denise, so we got a limit at the moment with the funding on how many people it can track, if that makes sense.
I think we put in for 200 people.
Okay.
So we've got a long way to go. Although, as Denise says, we've got quite a few people who've logged on or registered, but not all got round to using it. And I have to say, I do have to keep reminding myself.
Yeah, I've got a little Word document on my laptop, which I keep adding in my little hours of my husband's, because my husband's like, well, does it really matter if I don't capture my data? And I said, yes, it does.
So my other half is very keen on the app. He likes it. Whereas before we have every month I have to ring email everybody and say, remember to add your hours. We have a kind of online spreadsheet, Hamira, which might be helpful for you, which you can fill in your own time. So I've now eventually got used to that, so that might suit me better. But at least what it means is now I'm registered on the app, Denise can match my postcode to the hours I put in on the paper one, so you collect the demographic information that way. So that's more time consuming, and we want to try and weed that out. But we're never going to get rid of the paper version entirely, because not everybody uses a smartphone, and when it is a group event, that's really hard to do because you won't know who's got the app and who hasn't.
Yeah,
so about 25 people have actually registered. I just did a quick count.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few actions. I guess, Helen, your offer was really helpful in terms of getting this pushed out to other people that you, as the Park Service, work with. In terms
that's Rooney, not
sorry, not Harvey. Helen Rooney. Yeah.
I'll speak with Joe, and we'll coordinate it through Joe. Kind of the people.
We know for sure that Birmingham Tree people and Witton Lodge are interested as well. Emma and Denise. So if I can leave Bosworth to get in touch with them, if that's okay. Do you?
Will they get in touch with us?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Denise, do you want to put your email in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
And I guess Freddie and Helen as well. I know you're kind of still, finding your feet around Aubrey Fields and Ward End. And I completely hear Freddie's points about suspicion, about who on earth these people are asking questions. But, if we can start to get some more local people interested in using an app as well, that would be great. I know it's a while yet before we get to that stage, but it's really, really interesting to see what comes back, I think, from existing volunteers as well. So, and I know Emma and Denise, there were quite a few people who couldn't come today, but were interested in hearing more. So what we'll do is we'll send this presentation out, the recording, and see if that's enough for people to kind of get started and to find out more. And then we could always signpost them to you directly, really, in terms of hearing more about it. So, Freddie, do you want to come in?
It's just a short one. I think I'm interested in Simon Needle. I wish I could get your contacts if it's all right. I can send you an email just to get more information from yourself.
Yeah, no problem, Freddie. I'll send you an email.
But is all right. Thank you.
Because I guess also, Freddie, with what hopefully these kind of forums will also do is make other volunteering opportunities like even more. I had no idea, and in terms of actually what Birmingham Tree People did, Simon, before you started talking about it, in terms of we've got volunteers doing tree surveys and things and stuff.
Yeah.
They're really very practical and quite technical work.
Yeah, I mean, Mac and Steve are also on the call today, but we've also become registered as a level 2 provider for certificate of arboriculture. So that's a formally recognised qualification that we'll be delivering. So that's part of the group's remit now, as well as the monthly online training sessions that we've been doing.
Yeah, and this kind of going back to Debbie's very first point about bringing this all together into a Green Birmingham website. Not that we want to replicate any information that BOSIF offers or Birmingham Tree People offer or what have you, but just to know and have it all in one place that these different opportunities exist actually, because you might not know to look for Birmingham Trees for Life or Birmingham Tree People or even BOSIF if you don't know that they existed. So I think there's huge benefit here about kind of bringing this forum together.
Well, I think that's one of the things we're saying. I think with some of the email blasts, if we have things where we want to monitor our own volunteers, but also opportunities for other people to come in, regardless of what their background is. They may have an interest in trees, and like you say, they're people that we don't reach. So if we say, we need 20 volunteers to come and help with a mass tree planting at a site somewhere, we could put that out, and people could just, if they've got the app, they can register and say they're going to attend. We know that we've got the people coming along, don't we? So
Max has put in the chat about having nearly 200 volunteers on our own. So, and again, this isn't, but we are just testing. So it's not about necessarily, implementing a plan kind of as it would happen in terms of if we were doing it properly. But it'd be really interesting to put it out to Birmingham Tree People and see who comes back in terms of wanting to use the app. And we can always look at extra funding as well, Mac, if actually Birmingham Tree People wanted to do more, and we could increase the capacity of that via BOSIF. So don't let that put you off.
I think it'd be really good to be able to see. I mean, we've got 27 very active volunteers at the moment doing the highway street survey. It'd be really useful to trial it with them, I think, to capture their hours.
Fantastic.
Sorry, Simon, are they registering their volunteer hours at all at the moment?
Not so much, no. Unless Steve's keeping anything.
In some ways, if they've not done it, we're not asking them to give up something they're comfortable with for something new. So it's easier to give them something new.
Yeah.
Which is why we're keen to work with somewhere like Swanshurst, because all my lot have got really used to the old system. So weaning them off the old system is harder than where we've got people who've never done anything before.
Well, for part, we're looking to use digital methods to capture the survey data, so we could add the app onto that tablet as well. Where we're giving those out when we give those out.
That's a good idea.
And just one final question. I'm conscious we've gone over, folks. So the last question from me for Joe and Steve in terms of our ranger service. I know obviously volunteering's on hold during lockdown from a BCC perspective for the ranger service, but in terms of Helen's offer to kind of, coordinate with various other sources of data for volunteering, would that also be covered in terms of the people that the rangers interact with, all those individuals? Sorry, I asked that question at Joe, Steve, and Helen. So whoever wants to maybe come in on that.
So first, I don't know what the Rangers have already got in place. It's something we'd be happy to trial.
Okay, so if we liaise with Steve on that, or would it be the Ranger Hub managers, Joe?
If we do it through the Ranger Hub managers, then they'll be able to keep it local.
Okay, brill. That's great. Okay, and it will probably just be sending out the infographic, the little thing that Emma showed. Sorry, the little square with a QR code or something. So, so yeah. All right, brill. Okay, folks. Well, we'll send out some brief notes after this and the recording. Anybody who wants to see it again, if you haven't heard enough the first time round. And yeah, if you really like our really bright yellow shells that we've just had made and my husband's painted, and we'll keep you posted on how it develops. And if it's helpful, we can bring this forum together again. I think just to show how it's working. I think this has really been beneficial over and above data capture. I think just to hear what the people are doing at the moment as well. So yeah, so thank you all for your time. And yeah, just to kind of plug our new members, Helen and Freddie, Helen Harvey. You know, really approachable, very much here to help around anything volunteering related. So please, you know, do feel free to contact them as well. So, okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Debbie, for kind of getting this all organised as well. Much appreciated.
That's okay. I'll make sure I add all the details of everything to the slides. So if we send them out to anybody who can't make it, all of your details will be on there. So.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.